not always an easy thing from a parenting perspective or from a teaching perspective, but is this part of the kind of character that we want to help children develop in our schools and in our homes? And if you're really lucky, you might become resilient enough that you can try things and fail and pick yourself back up. And then try another thing and fail and pick yourself back up. And after a little while, you'll figure out what works and what doesn't work. And you're starting to develop this amazing thing, this term that I love, self-efficacy. This is not self-esteem. I like myself. I'm wonderful. Mommy says I'm the best kid in the world. This is self-efficacy. The belief that with effort and efficacy have the same root. The belief that with effort I can make good things happen for me in my life. The belief that with effort I can make myself happier, make something good for the people I love, make something good for the world, make this world a better place. Are there people in this room, I hope and pray there are, who have a powerful sense of self-efficacy, the understanding that with hard work you can make a difference in this world? Because that's the kind of people that we need as educators in the modern world. It's going to take hard work, and it's never been more important what we try to do with these kids and these families. Kids with low self-regulation skills, in fact, can be predicted even at fairly early ages what's likely to happen to them. How many of you remember the marshmallow experiment? This isn't in my slide, but some of you know about the marshmallow experiment. Silly little experiment back in the 60s. Took 4-year-old kids into a little testing room. They had one old stale marshmallow on the table. The researcher explained, I'm going out, I'll be back in a few minutes. I'm going to bring back 2 brand new fresh marshmallows. You can eat this old nasty one if you want to while I'm gone, or you can wait and I'll come back and bring you more and better. Silly little experiment, right? The cool thing about that experiment is that they followed up on these kids. They followed up on these kids for about 20, 25 years, and they were able to find out that the kids who could manage to wait a few minutes for the more marshmallows and the better marshmallows were more likely to graduate from high school, stay out of trouble, go on to advanced learning, be successful on the job, be successful in stable adult relationships. Really? And apparently the answer is yes. In New Zealand, they did a study with a whole bunch of kids, nice big N for the population, for the research. A 3-decade-long study. Kids with low self-regulation were more likely to smoke, have health problems, and lousy credit. 3 times more likely to commit crime, 3 times more likely to have multiple addictions, twice as likely to be single parents. Does self-regulation matter? I'm hoping and praying that we develop kids that have this powerful sense of resilience, this willingness to handle tough stuff. Uh-oh, have you heard? Have you seen? Do you know? More than half the kids in the United States of America that go to college or university don't finish their 4-year degree. 30 to 35% of the kids who graduate and get a degree end up living at home with mommy and daddy for long periods of time because they can't find jobs in their area of work. In fact, there has never been a greater need for resilient kids. There was a time when resilience maybe developed more naturally because of the lives that we led. When there was more struggle, when there was less affluence, there was more struggle. Certain things were different. There was this old lady in Texas who explained it to me this way. I was teaching in this tiny little town called Eagle Lake, Texas, a couple hours west of Houston out in the rice fields. They call themselves the goose hunting capital of the world. Eagle Lake, Texas, tiny little place. Cool. I had a great time there. And one of the things that I will always remember from that visit was I met the oldest, still teaching first grade teacher that I've ever met. 87 years old, still teaching first grade in Eagle Lake, Texas. And at some point in the day, she raised her bony old hand. Please understand, I fell in love with this woman. I absolutely felt she had those sparkling old eyes that some women had. Oh, there was a presence about her. She raised her hand and she said, Bob, back in the old days, back in the farm, we never had any problem at all getting our kids to do chores. Wait a second. Do some of the kids that come from the families you serve do chores? Do you know the research on chores? Somebody go home tonight, please, and do the research. All you got to do is put it in the search engine. Chores and school success. Chores and life success. The abundance of research that is out there on this one simple point. Chores, 15 or 20 minutes of doing something for the family, not just for yourself. Something that makes life better for another human being, not just yourself. Chores and the family. She raised her old hand and said, we never had any problem getting our kids to do chores. I said, why not? It was simple, she said. If nobody went out and picked up the eggs in the morning, I couldn't cook breakfast. Nobody went out and split the firewood and brought it inside, couldn't keep the cook stove warm. It was simple. We were a family, we were a team, we took care of each other, we needed each other. Is there value in that? And yet many kids today live lives where that expectation is gone, and the need is gone. And it's a very different thing to be a struggling family looking at your beautiful child and saying, oh, sweetie, sorry, we can't buy that for you. I know you want a brand new car. We can't buy you that. I know you want a brand new piece of technology. We can't right now. I'm sorry. That's one thing. I have to say that. But in families where that's not the case, they sometimes have to do something that's a whole lot harder than say, I can't. And that is to learn to say, I won't. Buying you every new thing that comes along is not inconsistent with our family values. Sorry, buddy, this time you're SOL. Is it okay to say no to children? And yet, this issue of resilience is a real issue in the world today. Kids who are resilient have that sense of safety and connection to their parents. They have that sense. They understand and accept limits, both at home and at school. They can calm themselves down. They don't need adults to flutter around and calm them down, talk them down, hug them down, give them ice cream to calm yourself down. Calm yourself down, sweetie. It's your job, not mine. They can delay gratification. They can work at things over time. They don't insist that everything has to be now. They can learn to stand up for themselves and for others. How many of you saw, as I did a year ago summer, that horrible video of the middle school bus ride in Upper New York State with the 68-year-old grandmother that was being abused on that bus? How many of you saw that horrible little video? This was Upper New York State, middle school kids on a bus ride. Somebody was taping it, was recording it. And kids on that bus are torturing and abusing this woman. They're poking at her physically, but more than that, emotionally and verbally. Her son had committed suicide not too long before. They were saying things like, no wonder he committed suicide. Anybody could commit suicide if they had you for a mother. You ought to kill yourself. Things of the worst order. This recording went on for about 10, 11 minutes. Turned my stomach. I could hardly get through that period of time. And as bad as the bullying was, as bad as the abusive behavior was, as bad as the fact that somebody thought it was okay and maybe even funny to videotape this, as bad as all that was, there was a part of me that I just couldn't let go of. Wasn't there somebody on that bus? Wasn't there a strong young man or woman somewhere on that bus? I don't know what the bus driver was doing even. Where is some strong 12, 13-year-old boy or girl who's going to look at those kids and say, stop that, we don't act like that, that's not how we treat her or anybody around here. Not just kids who can stand up for themselves, but developing those kids who can stand up for each other. On a whole bus, how could there not be a few? I wonder. And I really think about that, because there's lots of examples of that kind of thing out there in the world. Are we willing to stand up for each other when someone crosses that line and treats anybody around me in ways that we know are not appropriate? Kids with resilience can learn to do that. Kids with resilience and learn to struggle. How many of you like the feeling of struggle? Trying new things, stretching yourself, going for runs or bike rides, taking adventures or trips, doing things intellectually or emotionally that you have not accomplished before. Lacking the willingness and maybe even the love of struggle, your life changes. They can deal with mistakes or sadness. In fact, they might even develop the capacity to say, hey, great, I screwed up, it didn't work, I learned a lot, now I know how to do something better. Last but not least, all of this leads to better relationships because last I checked, relationships some days take resilience. Whenever I think of resilience, I think of some of the people that I have known over time. There are all kinds of things that take resilience. I'm thinking of, hey, right here, coach cross country. Cross country! What does cross country have to do with resilience? Are there days it's not fun? Are there days that it hurts? Are there days that you lose? Wait a second, that's not fair. Make all the kids start later than me. I want to win this time. We make fun of things like that. And yet, cross country, guess what sports team, of all the sports teams, in almost all cases, not in all of course, but in the vast majority of cases, guess what sporting team within a school has the highest GPA? Cross country. It's not because they're the brightest. Anybody that runs through all that pain can't be the brightest. It is because they have a stick-to-itiveness that some other groups of kids do not. Whenever I think of resilience, I think of an old guy that I knew. I used to live in northern Michigan. I live in the southern part of Michigan now, around Ann Arbor. And I used to live up in the north, and I had a little farm. There was a guy down the road from me, an old Russian farmer by the name of Mr. Renkovich. We all called him Mr. Renkovich. He was actually known in the area as kind of a crabby old guy. Most of the people around there thought of him as being somewhat aloof and uninterested and not very social kind of a neighbor. Mostly he didn't have time for them. In fact, mostly he was just a little, unimpressed with some of his neighbors. He was a little crabby, people said, but I used to go down and buy grain from him, and in his mid-70s, he could take a 100-pound sack of grain, throw it up on his shoulder easier than I could back in my early 30s. He was a strong old man. He had those hands. You know those hands of a strong old man? He came over to the United States from Russia as a 12-year-old. He learned the language. He found some land. He built a farm. And they built a farm for his son, and then for his other son, and then for his daughter. They were workers. They were men and women that acted on this earth and respected the earth and respected other people. For some reason, this guy liked me. I'd come over to buy some grain, and we would just talk. He used to call me the professor. And we would just talk, and he was one of the most thoughtful and kind and resilient people. I want that kind of resilience for myself in this life. Here's the model of resilience that you carry with you. I don't. Turn to an interesting, intelligent-looking person. Are they still looking that way? I know they had a little conversation before. If they're still looking intelligent and interesting, turn to them and just in 30 seconds, tell them who is your model of resilience. Ready, set, go. average have 5 consistent characteristics. The first one is they have a sense of what's called realistic thinking. They are not doing magical thinking, which is things should just be that way. I should get everything I want. Everything should always fall in line. Somebody's going to come along and just give me a new school or a new car or a new something, or a better husband or a better spouse. Instead, they know that hard work is necessary to accomplish important things in this world. That on average, it doesn't just fall into your lap. It is typically hard work and a little good fortune. But hard work opens the door to good fortune. Another characteristic is a sense of trust and faith, a sense that there's something bigger than you, that you are part of something more that supports and guides and is there for you. It's not just you doing this on your own. You're a part of doing something important. You're a part of being given energy to do something important. The capacity for radical reinvention, which simply means, I tried that, it didn't work. I better try something different. There are a lot of kids that don't have that sense. I tried it, it should have worked. I'm going to quit. That's sort of sad. But you live out here where there's a lot of interest in the tech industry. The tech industry, like maybe no other in history, tries things, quickly tries to collect data and adjust so that things might work better. The idea of learning from experience is rich in this part of the country. Social support, that sense of not being alone. I am loved, I am connected, I have a group of people who love me, support me, work with me, care for me, are there for me when I need help. And last but not least, a sense of humor, which of course gets us through the days. What I wish that mom on the airplane knew is how important it is to parent and teach certain things to our kids. That it doesn't just happen by accident. It doesn't just happen if kids get everything that they want easily. In fact, struggle and self-regulation and empathy and social skills and resilience and a sense of service are all things that must be nurtured, grown, developed over time. There are certain skills that we know are associated with homes and schools where kids learn these kinds of self-regulation skills that lead to empathy, that lead to resilience. A clear, consistent sense of routine in the home or in the classroom. An absolute understanding that respectful speech is the norm and the expectation in this home and in this school. In homes, being able to say, uh-oh, bad decision, you need to go over there and sit down quietly for a few minutes. I'll let you know when you can come back and be with the group. And know that kids can learn to go over there, sit, get calm, get quiet, maybe think a little bit, consider why they're there, and then be invited with love to be back in the family. These routines only work, however, if adults do them from a calm, self-regulated place themselves. Angry, out of control adults do not create good routines around things like that. Now, we don't use things like timeout, perhaps, in all of the classrooms and schools that I know, but I know some schools and classrooms where they have things like, I know one school I saw the other day that had a figure it out spot in the corner. It wasn't a punishment place. They called it the figure it out place. And that was kind of wonderful. I went into one classroom a while back, and it was called the safe place. And the teacher noticed when a kid was feeling anxious or upset, and not as a reaction to bad behavior, but as an upfront response to noticing that kids might be just not doing well today. You need a little time in the safe place. And the safe place was a place where she taught kids how to calm themselves down and get ready to come back to the group. But my favorite of all the ones that I've seen in the years was a teacher. She was a first grade teacher. She had a little place in her classroom called Bora Bora. And she had Gauguin pictures and pictures of the islands and a little beach blanket, all kinds of cool stuff back there. And every once in a while, kids have a bad day. She'd come along and she'd say, do you need a few minutes in Bora Bora? in some schools, or staff calling Bora Bora. We ever had a day when somebody, it really would have been nice if somebody could have come along and said, do you need a few hours in Bora Bora? Better yet, at the end of the week, we're all going there on a staff trip. How many of you vote for staff training over in Bora Bora at some point in the future? I think you ought to all go back, and I'll be glad to show up there and be your teacher. Basic routines like food routines in the home. Basic routines like chores in the home. Well, you don't live with these kids at home, perhaps. Is it possible that even affluent kids in your school should be helping cleaning up the classroom, making life better, doing service projects in the community, getting a sense that doing something not just to serve myself, but to serve other people in the world is an important part of being a human? Noticing positive behaviors, far more than noticing negative behaviors, is part of developing good self-regulation skills. It takes a lot of self-regulation on your part, however, to get really good at using that. The research is very clear on this point. Great classrooms, in fact, any great team of people working together, need to have about a 6-to-1 ratio of positive communication compared to negative communication like judgments and consequences. A 6-to-1 ratio between positive and negative communication in a high-functioning classroom or in any high-functioning group of people trying to work together. To help raise resilient kids, we want to teach them to solve their own problems as much as possible. That means holding your tongue at times when you know what you would like to tell them and simply saying, oh, sweetie, that's a tough spot. What are you going to do about that? And if there's no blood on the floor, and if you know they can solve this problem on their own without physical or emotional damage, allowing them to do so as much as possible so that someday they'll grow up to be resilient adults. Last but not least, the secret ingredient in all of this, if I want to teach self-regulation in my school, in my classroom, or in my home, the number one key ingredient is adults who can self-regulate and set the rules and the consequences and deal with the behaviors and go through your day in a self-regulated, calm, purposeful, maybe even loving state. Turn to your friend, explain to a person very briefly, don't tell them how we can teach this, that takes too long. Why is this absolutely essential for the future of our children, and you only have 30 seconds to set them? Lacking the capacity to calm yourself, delay gratification, get yourself in a healthier emotional perspective. Lacking that capacity, kids do not have empathy. Empathy comes from being able to be calm enough on the inside to look around and notice what's happening with people out here on the outside. The poorly regulated child struggles to develop empathy. Empathy is incredibly important for the development of all social skills and all emotional intelligence. Empathy is critical for being able to work well with people in the world. And if you're really lucky, you'll develop attachment, self-regulation, a sense of empathy, awareness of others, the social skills, the resilience that comes along with that. That amazing process. It is a crucial process. Security leads to self-regulation. Self-regulation leads to empathy. Empathy leads to emotional intelligence and social skills, and maybe service to others. It's a beautiful thing. I got lucky a couple of years ago. I wrote this book kind of because somebody twisted my arm and suggested that we needed a book that didn't just talk about punishing bullies. Instead, we needed to talk about, my perspective is, that we need to teach kids what good behavior looks like, how we want to treat other people and be treated, and then to give you the skills to learn to stand up and speak up when someone violates those norms or expectations. Stand up for yourself, but also for others. So I wrote a book about that. It turned into, for the last 2 years, the best-selling children's book on bullying. And that was a nice thing for me. And then I, last February, published this book that's about teaching kids the value of empathy. Some days I get tired of teaching teachers and parents about the importance of empathy for their effectiveness as educators and parents. So I decided to try to teach kids directly, circumvent the older folks, and within just a couple of months, I am fortunate to report, this has become the best-selling book on empathy in the world. It embarrasses the hell out of me that people like Daniel Goleman have done all of the research and the work on social constructs related to empathy. And those technical books, I've written about 15 of those, so they don't tend to sell as much as a book like this. So this has been the #1 book in the world on empathy since about April, and I'm awfully glad to report that. I only have a couple of copies. I might sell a couple of those. But then in about 2 weeks, this book's coming out, and it's called Stand Up and Speak Up. It's about kids who have learned how to do this, and it shows it to you powerfully in action. Are all these things important? Here's the research for those of you who needed this all along. The research says character, grit, resilience, inner strength. These things are, in fact, a 3 times better predictor of which kids will do well in a learning environment like college, or in fact when they get out into the real world of life. A better predictor than IQ, a better predictor than SAT, a better predictor than ACT. How important is self-regulation in the lives of these children? And here's my 3 questions that I want to leave you with as you go out the door. Does your school and your curriculum give sufficient attention and priority to the development of these skills? Or have you, like so many places, gotten caught up in the race towards academic outcomes? I don't diminish the importance of academic learning. I am saying kids that are poorly